Welcome to another episode of AnimeCons TV. My name is Doug Wilder, and well, we're finally able to do convention reports again, and not just virtual conventions, real life in-person conventions. And I got to go to my very first in-person convention since the COVID-19 pandemic began, and hopefully things are moving in the right direction. Just keep remembering to wear your masks, get vaccinated if you haven't already, and all that good stuff. But let's talk about how Otakon 2021 was, because it was a very unique year, and this was part of the reason why I wanted to make sure I attended when they announced that it was going to happen. So, first off, I want to say that the convention itself made it very clear, both before the convention and during the convention, everyone was going to be required to wear a mask inside the convention center. No exceptions. This was spelled out repeatedly on their social media. You saw signs for it everywhere, including their little crab mascot that they use sometimes, having a mask and stuff like that. And you even saw a lot of cosplayers take this as an opportunity to make a mask that actually matched their costume and make it really clever. So cosplayers took it as a good opportunity. And for the most part, I never really saw anybody disobeying it. Everyone from staff to vendors to panelists, I'll get to panelists actually in a second, and just regular attendees, everyone was following the policy really nicely. So there were some people that as soon as they stepped outside were taking it, but I mean, hey, they were keeping it on inside. That's really good. I think that's fantastic thing. So mentioning to the panelists, I did not run one of my own panels. I was a guest on a friend's panel, and the staff went kind of back and forth. First, they said, if you're presenting, you can take the mask off because you're 6 feet away. You're not going to be too close to other people. Then they said, nope, everyone has to wear the mask regardless. And then they went back to, well, you're 6 feet away, it's fine. And as it turned out, every panel I went to, everyone was wearing their mask pretty much for the entire presentation, which I think as panelists, that's a really good example to set, show the good behavior and things like that. And I think, just smart, safe decision too. So one of our questions that we got about Otakon was from someone on Twitter. I hope I'm not butchering the name. Lacuna Craft asked how the crowding felt. And one of the things I will say about Otakon this year is compared to previous years at the Walter Washington Convention Center, and this is still compared to the old site at the Baltimore Convention Center. It's only been a couple years. It's still kind of the newer site. It's a little harder to judge, but I would say I heard a couple people throw around the number of, it feels like it's about 70% what it would be in a normal year. And I think that's a pretty good estimate. They have set up their official numbers and things like that. But because of the move to DC and everything and the pandemic, it's really hard to judge how successful of a year it was attendance-wise. So a little hard there. The other thing that was very visible to me right off the bat, and just in little kind of unique ways, were you could see that Otakon, if you kind of looked under the surface, was definitely trying to cut some of their costs. And we saw previously that they had put out the call for donations, asking for some financial help and things like that. So you could see they were trying to keep it a little bit slimmer here. Obviously, they didn't have any, international guests coming in, things like that. So that probably saved a bunch of money there. But you also saw things like they didn't have a printed program guide. They only had what they call their Awesome Sheet of Awesomeness, which is basically just a sheet with the maps of the convention center site and like a few quick reference pieces of information like hours for certain events and like the dealer's room and things like that. Speaking of the dealer's room, it definitely was less populated than previous years, didn't have as many vendors. Some either didn't come. I only saw really for an industry booth would maybe be the Discotheque booth, and really they're honestly more just like a regular old vendor. You didn't really see a big industry presence there. And it also, one of the things we found out was that the lanes for the vendors were actually kind of 10 feet apart, and which is a different length than before, because that way, kind of, even if you had some people at your booth, they would still kind of, even if, people next to each other are at your booth, but across the aisle, they're still at least 6 feet apart, which was a nice little decision there, I thought. It did fill the space a little bit, but it still felt kind of empty. One of the things that I did find really strange was there's this one company that I know is at least at a lot of East Coast conventions. I'm not sure how far in America they are, is Wild Bill's Soda, which is a company that sells like metal mugs. I actually have kind of one of my older ones right here that I've used previously, got at a previous Otakon. And they have a program where you buy the mug and then either you get unlimited soda refills that weekend, or you just pay a daily price to get free refills for that day. And it's, it's not a bad model. However, everyone's there pulling the taps, refilling their own soda and everything like that. And I know they have a little bit of a rinse station, but I still, personally, with the pandemic still not fully behind us, I really feel like that was a bad choice. And I understand you want a vendor there, and as a vendor who's built on catering to events like this, you need to make money. I think it was a bad decision. If I'd walked by and they had said, oh, well, we have a limited edition Otakon 2021 mug, only available this year, we're selling it now, I may have bought one just to kind of support a vendor that is good, even though I wasn't going to get any drinks from them. But I didn't hear anything about that. And again, back to the cost-cutting measures, even Otakon's merchandise booth, the only kind of new merch they had were Otakon branded masks, which sold out very quickly. And they didn't have any new year branded merchandise this year. Again, I think just because they didn't know how many people were going to come, and if you got to cut costs, that's one way to do it. So, but going back to the lack of the physical guide, so the only really way to find out panels on site about panels coming up were the online website and the guidebook app. I'll talk about both of those. So first off, the online schedule on the website, it was a really weird model that you had to check by room by day. So you could only see, like, say, what is going on panel room 1 on Saturday. And you'd click on it, and that's all you could see. And then, like, maybe you could get the little descriptions on it. But you couldn't just kind of browse the entire thing all at once, which, if you're not doing anything, like, on one day, or you're like, okay, what's happening at 2 o'clock on Friday, you couldn't really compare everything that was going on at the same time, which was really kind of annoying. If you have the guidebook app on your phone, which generally we love the guidebook here at AnimeCons TV, the app works really well. It's a great way to kind of make your own schedule, things like that. I promise we're not getting any money from guidebook. I like them. But the thing about I noticed in the guidebook app is it didn't have some of the usual features that you could do, like rate the quality of a panel, like say, oh, I thought this was a 5-star panel, or oh, this was a really bad panel, it's only 1 star. It also didn't list the presenter names in the app, and I don't know if that was just something Otakon forgot to do or they chose not to do, but it's one of those things that I sometimes look to just kind of browse and see, oh, well, what's this panel about? What this name? Oh, this is presented by so-and-so. I really like when they do panels. I want to make sure I go to it now that I know they're presenting it. And so not to have those presenter names was a little strange. The last little cost-cutting measure I'll mention is you could tell they didn't have as much programming space. Like there was basically nothing in the Marriott Marquis Hotel, which is connected to the convention center, aside from photo shoot rooms. Like they had 2 rooms divided by air walls that you could walk between for different photo shoots that people scheduled through the conventions. There was these were just empty rooms, no setting, anything. This was just a spot to take pictures and easy to meet up, and that was it. Going back to the masks for a moment, this was one of the cooler groups I saw. There was a bunch of Gundam Seed cosplayers. They had a group of people from the Archangel crew and they all had matching masks for the Gundam from that series. And then another one that's kind of from the character Isaac had a mask that matched the dual Gundam. So they had, all of them were in character and matching their kind of faction, which I thought was a really clever way to do masks. But again, going back to the programming space, there wasn't a very big room for seated screening stuff for anything. Like, they had a room called the Amv Theater, and they had to run a couple of panels in there. But I actually went there for the AMV contest. It was the first time in a while. I did not have anything scheduled during that time. On Friday, I was like, oh, good, I'm going to check out the AMVs. I love seeing them when I can get to the contest, because I usually walk away with at least one or two new shows that I see a AMV about. Oh, it's like, oh, I know nothing about it, but now that I saw that AMV, I want to check it out. And that was really cool to be able to do. Unfortunately, I don't know if it was just they didn't have the AC turned up as high as it should be, because they weren't trying, wanted to make sure nothing was spreading, too much was spreading in the convention center, or what. But that room was just a sauna. It was super hot. It was super warm, and I was starting to get really kind of frustrated. And even though I had a water bottle that I was sipping out of through a straw, it wasn't helping. And that, combined with the fact that I was towards the back of the room, and I just got unlucky with a lot of people, probably because they got hot, deciding, oh, I'm not going to stay for the rest of the music videos, getting up and leaving and walking in front of me, which was already kind of an annoying interruption. However, Otakon staff was trying to get people seated into empty seats, so they weren't standing in the back or waiting in line outside to come see the contest. But because my row was so close to the back, whenever a seat opened up, it felt like every 30 seconds a staffer was sending more people in front of me to sit down, and then these people, half the time, these people would stay for a couple of minutes and be like, oh, you know what, I don't want to stay. And I'd get interrupted again, and the process would repeat itself. And I tried to talk to the staffer the last time they did, say, hey, can you wait till the end of the song? Or, hey, can you pick another spot? Like, look for other places where people are leaving. And I just kind of got a shrug from the staffer. And I was maybe a quarter way through the AMV contest screening when I finally decided, you know what, I'm getting too frustrated. I'm hot. I'm angry. I'm going to get upset at someone who's being seated who doesn't even know any better because they're new to the seating, and I'm just going to lose my temper. And so I actually took myself out of it, and I was thinking about it. This is the only time I've ever left an AMV contest because I felt angry. Usually if I've left, it's because I've had another event or another obligation that I have to go to, or I stay through the end. This was the first time I've been going to conventions since 2001. This was the first time I left that room feeling angry. And I hate that I had to do that, but between the heat and everything else, I just couldn't take it. And it was probably the only time for me personally that, with the heat and like not feeling comfortable, that I honestly felt a little concerned about whether or not the safety, the air quality was safe within the convention center. So that's a weird part. So, but again, that was the only time that it really bothered me. I did check out a couple of panels. One of the panels that they held in that Amv Theater as just a regular panel was Evan Minto from Gamers, the Gamers podcast, who we need to get on this show at some point, had a panel called The Art of the Eye Catch, which he talks about, the eye catches between parts of the episodes and things like that. And my feedback there is he had mentioned that it was his first time doing this panel, that he still needs to do some more research and see if he can't find out more information. And it felt like a very, very good first draft. Like, it was a really good panel that, if it comes together a bit more and it gets a little more research and find some other pieces that he can mention, either from feedback from people that went to the panel or stuff like that, this could be a really fascinating panel to talk about. So I hope it comes back in another form. It improves, because he's got a great idea there, and I hope he runs with it. So that was one. George Horvath, who some of you guys might know as Land of Obscuration, ran a panel called companies that knew nothing about what anime fan wants. Yes, I know it's not fans. That's part of the panel name. And that was a great one talking about the history of licensing companies in America and some outside of America that just had no clue what they were doing for getting anime licenses and distributing it in America or anywhere really. And just the stories he found and just some of the things, and it's like some of them are like, oh man, I remember when that company did that. And then there's ones that are like, wait, they did what? And it's a really fun panel, definitely worth checking out. Let's see, the last fan panel that I want to mention is, or actually there's two. The first one was History of Hentai in English by Gerald Rothko from the Anime World Order podcast. That was really fun. Of course, it was an 18 plus panel, but again, it was well researched, a lot of neat information, stuff I didn't know, stuff I wish I never had to know, but it's interesting to see all the information that's brought out. And when it's weird being in a panel that's so well researched and talking about, hentai, but it worked and it was really good. And there was another one that I just did on kit bashing, which unfortunately I cannot remember the name of off the top of my head. I apologize. But it was a good workshop one. They had a camera set up for showing the setup, and how they did it was they pre-made their armature, which is just kind of the skeleton of the thing they're creating. And I loved the angle that they went with for showing how approachable it is. You had the one person running the panel talking about how it is like, oh, you do this, and this, and kind of working on his own while he's doing that. And then he had a friend that he brought on that had never done any kit bashing and just kind of listened to the instructions he was giving. And every so often it's like, hey, I forget the name of the person. I apologize, but it's like, hey, Bob, how you doing on what you're building for the first time? And they'd cut over to him and show him how he's doing it. So it's like, okay, look, this is a person, here's what the veteran's doing. But look, this person is doing it for the first time right now, following the directions we give, and look at the stuff he's making. And as someone who has never done any kit bashing but likes building model kits, having that, hey, look, you can do this right away, just starting today, was really cool. And like, it was a nice confidence boost of like, hey, even I can do this, which that's something you want in a workshop. You want people to feel like this is something I can do too, and that it doesn't take that much. The two industry panels I went to was Denpa, the manga publisher, which they announced a few new things, showed a couple new things. But one of the things they talked about, some of the licenses, is that they got the original plates, like the big original pieces for the prints of the manga in Japan, and they're going in, restoring them and stuff like that. And I absolutely love it when companies aren't just in an industry panel, rah, look what we got, hey, isn't this cool? There's a time and a place for that, and believe me, I'm going to get to that. But I like seeing the nuts and bolts and talking about it a little more. And that was a good one because I hadn't heard much of that from a manga standpoint before. And I would really like to see more companies take the approach of how to create a regional release, and especially if it's like a remastered or something like that. Talk about that process, like turn that into a panel, get people like that work hard at adjusting and updating and things like that. I think there's a great panel in there. Friends that I know that are in the industry, if you're watching, or if someone told you about this episode, yes, please make that a panel. I think you've got a lot of potential there, and I think a lot of people would really enjoy that. Speaking of licensors that talk about the nuts and bolts and their misadventures of creating stuff, the other one I went to was the Discotheque Media panel, which I'm a huge fan of the work they do. They do a lot of neat releases. They talked about all the stuff that they've got for their Project Echo Blu-ray release, which is insane, and all the hard work and everything they did that. And then they talk about Ronin Warriors, or the Japanese name Samurai Troopers, how they had to go for they're going to do a Blu-ray release of it, and all the things they had to do, because apparently in the English Ronin Warriors release, they changed the speeds in a bunch of random places to make it fit in the American TV block and all this weird stuff, and how they went back and adjusted those speeds so the Japanese version and the English version match up, and just like, here's all of a sudden, we've got it all fixed, and now here's 400 gigabytes on the computer I was working at just for this show, and it's just crazy stuff like that. And of course, that was a lot of neat stuff. And we've had Mike Toole, who on this podcast before, and he works for Discotheque. And one of the things I love about the panel that he does is he keeps it running. He keeps the moving, keeps talking about it. He gets a few points about what they're working on, but then it's like, you know what? All right, we got to keep rolling along and stuff like that. And it's, those of you who've been to the Discotheque panel before, it's a very positive one. Like, you feel really good about all the stuff they're doing. Everyone's there to have a good time because they like anime, they like seeing that stuff, and it feels like a very welcoming space. And I've said before, I want to bottle that energy because it's such a good feeling, and I wish I could experience that kind of good vibe year round. So, kind of the grand finale for the Discotheque media panel at Otakon 2021 was, oh, by the way, we're going to be doing a Blu-ray release, remastered, lots of extras for Gunbuster. That room lost its goddamn mind, myself included. And whatever good feelings I say I want to bottle from a normal Discotheque panel, that level of excitement and just happy feelings and everything was high octane, unleaded, unfiltered, pure glee, like the highest tier, top shelf energy of that kind. Like, everyone was just so excited, and I can think of very few license announcements I've seen at a convention by a company that have gotten that strong of a reaction from a crowd, and it was just incredible. So yeah, that I'll be ready to buy that as soon as I can, because that's super exciting. But it was one of the neat things. And because the Discotheque panel was on Saturday evening, and normally they're like Sunday afternoon at Otakon, it was the things just about everyone was talking about, that like the crew that I know that likes older anime and stuff like that. It seemed like that's all everyone could talk about the next day. So the hype chain just kept running. And because they played it at the end of the panel as everyone's filtering out, I've had Active Heart stuck in my head for almost a week now, and I'm not complaining because that's going to be really fun to check out. So that's about it. I will say just kind of a few other little tidbits here and there. I think the con, all told, did really well given the circumstances. Last time to prepare, lower amount of attendees. I think masking, having everyone masked was good. I kind of wish they could have said you need to be vaccinated, but I don't, maybe the protocol wasn't available at that time. That said, I personally made a point of getting myself tested for COVID the day before I left, so I would get my results the day before I left, so I knew I was, clear going down. And I also, as soon as I got back, the day I got back, I also tested. Thankfully, I came back negative, but I made sure both going to and from that I was safe there, and that helped put my mind at ease there. I haven't heard anything since, but I hope that it's done well. It was the convention center and the city's first major big event since the pandemic, so I think they were kind of using it as a little bit of a test bed to see how things go. And again, I think all things considered, they did very well. A couple weird decisions here and there, like I mentioned the Wild Bills thing, but it was a really good feeling. And I know a lot of people were nervous, myself included. I know some people wish they had done a bit more social distancing in the seats for some of the rooms. I personally, anytime I could find a seat that had kind of a bubble of 6 feet around so I wasn't too close to people, I opted for that and things like that. But all considered, I think they did the best job they could, and I hope Otakon's, is going to succeed with this and move forward, just because it was a weird and off year. One of the things that stands out to me as I was doing it is, again, this is my first convention back, and it's weird to think the last time I had gone to a convention in person was November 2019, so it's been a while. And Otakon's the convention I've been going to the longest. I have a lot of positive feelings, and I remember going in line to pick up my press badge, which was just in the regular registration room, and it was a conversation with the head of the press relations team, who I've known for years at this point, a very friendly face, and even behind the mask. And I remember being, here's you go, here's your badge, and without even thinking, I blurted out, "It's good to be home again." And whatever complications and hurdles that came, that was such a good feeling. And you saw that in so much of the behavior of everyone there. Everyone really wanted to make this a good time for everyone else. Like, you never really got that vibe of anybody being a jerk. Like, normally at a convention, it feels like there's always that one or two, oh, it's that guy being obnoxious or shouting memes or running around being annoying. Everyone was really involved in making sure that this was a really good weekend for everyone. And I personally walked away feeling really good. I'm still really worried that post-con depression's going to hit me when I least expected. I'm worried that, maybe if the pandemic doesn't get under control, things might go back to being locked down and future conventions might have to cancel or postpone or whatever. But everything felt like, okay, everything's not back to normal yet, but this is a strong sign that it is getting back to normal. So I hope that we continue on this trend. I hope that Otakon and everybody else does well. Just my own personal opinion is, don't forget that if you are able to get vaccinated, please do so, because that's how we're going to beat this. And in the meantime, stay safe, take care of each other, and take care of yourselves. And if you have any questions about my experience at Otakon that I didn't get into on this episode, or just about cons coming back in general, or just whatever other stuff you want to ask us about conventions, don't forget to email us. You can email us at podcast@animecons.tv. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, all over the place. We're on Facebook. If you want to find us, you can always just look us up online too at animecons.tv. We love hearing from you guys, and especially now that cons are coming back, we're hoping that we can hear from you guys again soon. My name is Doug Wilder. See you again soon.